always something, right? There's always something. Imagine that this is a nice freehand chalkboard-looking font. So we'll see how this goes. I feel so plain now. Right, so good morning. Welcome to Meet Magento Poland. Yeah, it's 5th edition. This has been quite the start to a conference. A bunch of us got together yesterday. Marta, who was actually a big part of the organizing force here, she, along with Victor from Creativity here in Poland, they took us skydiving yesterday, right? So a bunch of us, we got together, got into a perfectly good aircraft, and jumped right the hell out the side of it. And I will say there is nothing better to help you get over those pre-conference jitters than being faced with flying through the air at 200 kilometers an hour. It's actually something that before I get into my presentation, I really wanted to comment on, because it's emblematic of the spirit of Magento, Meet Magento. All of us together here, when people get together and we're not just talking code, we're sharing not just our business and our passions around Magento, we're sharing. We're sharing in the other things that we value in our life. And that's the sign of a really, really kind of high context, rich community. So if you don't feel like you're a whole part of it yet, or if you don't feel quite so ingrained in that, then stay here for the presentation immediately following mine. My colleague Sherry Rohde will be up and talking about how to get into the Magento community and really participate. But for now, I will pretend that I know what I'm talking about and address the future of Magento. So, as I always do with my presentations, here's my contact info. It literally can be maybe the only thing of value in any of them. Perfect. I wanted to set the mood. Can we bring out the flowers and the chocolates and the champagne? The reason I put my contact information out there is not because I'm the only person who knows anything about Magento. In fact, most of the time, if you contact me here with a concern, I will actually just connect you with either another community member or someone inside our company who can help you more directly with whatever your question is, or listen to your idea. So that's that. I wanted to start by saying that we've come a long way. We've come a very long way. How many of you have been working with Magento since 2008? Put your hands up. Yeah, leave them up. How many since 2009? 2010? 11? 12? 13? 14? 15? I'm counting these really quickly, by the way. How many people have not really worked with Magento at all, and you're just here discovering it today? Very cool. All right, everybody, take a note of those hands and go. Give them a hug later. Pitch them a website or something. So, yeah, to kind of start talking about where we're going, we really have to talk about where we're coming from. Okay. So, back in 06, late 06, like December of 06, development began on the framework that would underpin Magento, Magento 1. GA happened March 2008, and then we had a really long run with Magento 1. And then in 2014, well, actually just towards the end of that, towards the end of 2013, actually, Anton Krill could probably correct me, but we got to about, I think I have a laser. Lasers. We had about right there. We started in earnest. This is not to scale. We started in earnest with development of Magento 2 in the form that it came to be released. November of last year, so almost a year ago, we released Magento 2. And the reason we had to go from Magento 1 to Magento 2 is, well, it's quite simple, right? Because 7 years is a long, long, long time. or 8 years is even longer. Math. So it's a really long time for a development framework, right? So, and I talk about framework and application. They're not necessarily interchangeable. I mean, Magento is it is a PHP framework that was used to build a commerce application. And technology, how developers develop over time, even PHP, the language itself evolved quite a lot in all that time, as did consumer expectations and store administrator expectations. Also, what evolved over time was how many integrations there are with any given store, right? So we're getting into a richer, more involved commercial space and developer space, and we simply had to evolve the product. So that's where we are right now. For those of you, I mean, some of you are perfectly familiar. Some of you got involved with our beta back in 2014. But where we are now is in this transition from Magento 1 to Magento 2. Now, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of people, plenty of businesses already running on Magento 2. I believe at this point there's over 3,000 stores, either that or close to 3,000 stores transacting online today, and those are the ones that we know about. One of the fun things about having an open source product is we don't always know who's using our stuff, and that's been that way since the beginning. But having released Magento 2, which was certainly momentous, it was quite a feat to get it out. It takes a lot of work to build, the commerce application, the open source commerce application that essentially, most of the online business in the world is using. But we've got it out the door, but there's still more to do. So we're not done. It's not just like, okay, here it is, and then we all sit back and just kind of watch people use it. We have some current hot topics. We have one of the things that we did differently from Magento 2 was we developed everything kind of in front of you all, in front of the developers. And so you have the ability, and have had the ability for a very long time, ever since December of 2014, to contribute directly online via GitHub, via pull request, or simply just filing an issue and sparking a discussion about technology. So what happened? Now see, we were really proud to do this, and it took us a lot of effort internally to facilitate that. You can imagine, over a dozen teams of engineers all having to work together to build a product, and then we add in a component where anyone in the world can contribute to that. It took a little work for us to get there, but we got there. Now, what we quickly found out, though, was that you all have a lot to say and a lot to offer to the platform. So we've been absolutely, and I will say absolutely delightfully, inundated with the interactions that we had with you all. So there were a number of issues and pull requests present on GitHub. Actually, there still are today. We also receive a lot of feature requests. Those are good. We have some, I'd say some room for improvement with developer experience. We're trying a lot of new things that actually haven't been done by anyone anywhere, at least in that format, or all together. Just a lot of new things that being put together in our, I would say, our basket of customization and how we get things done. And then another hot topic, one that we've been hearing about, ever since the beginning of Magento, right? It's developer documentation. So I'll address each of these in turn. We have, so as far as issues and PRs on GitHub goes, so where we are right now is we've spent the last several months in earnest feature development, right? So we had the 2.1 release, which offered a lot of new functionality. I think probably the most The most notable being a staging component for the enterprise product that is, I think, what people have been expecting of Magento for years, since Magento 1. But we have, with our current state, we're actually taking a step to the side and spending a lot of time working on these issues that are on GitHub. Right now, there's a little over 1,200 open issues there. There were, I think, at the height, very recently, until very recently, there were about 1,600 issues or so. So, before I say what's going on, I will say this: absolutely, if you find an issue, report it. If it's technical in nature, please report it on the repository. The reason you do that is so that others who may be experiencing that can chime in with their input, or maybe someone can take a look at that and say, "Oh, wait a minute! No, we've actually solved that problem. Here, here's a set of changes that will solve that." And they'll submit a pull requests. So, file those issues, submit the pull requests. We want you to keep doing that, absolutely. Now, what we're doing, though, because what we don't want is to have 1,200 open issues on GitHub. So what we're doing is we're spending a significant portion of our engineering time right now, and we'll be doing so in the future. We're actually burning down these issues. So this really speaks to a lot of the challenges that folks are having with as they start getting into Magento 2, and that is, they're encountering these issues, and it's taking a little while to resolve them. Now, these are not all necessarily critical issues, but they're important. They were important enough for a developer to spend time reporting, to identify, investigate, and report, and for us, for our engineers, to take a look at that and say, yes, okay, this is a verified issue. So you should be seeing the number of issues over the next 2-3 months burn down quickly. And we're going to try and keep it at a fairly low level, as well as make sure that we're responding to these issues in a timely manner, and also giving you maybe some deeper insight into the issue progress as we go along. That's an emerging story, so that's all I'll commit to right now. I will have a general Q&A session tomorrow during the Barcamp mini talks, so you can feel free to come and yell at me or ask questions or whatever. Or you've got some. My wife was showing me that there's some nice little yellow balls, so you can just throw those at me if you're frustrated. The next thing is, so related to the issues are feature requests. So if you're watching GitHub, you would have seen us go from like 1,600, and then all of a sudden 300 things just disappeared. And what happened there, or issues were closed, I should say. What happened there is one of our fantastic, actually the most senior member of the Magento team, like employee number 3, Piotr Kamiński, he wrote this nice little script, and we actually pulling feature requests now are going into our forum, so that you can actually track those and vote on those issues, right? So your participation here is pretty key, because we look to you all to prioritize our development, right? We have engineers, and they have keyboards and computers, and they type stuff, and the stuff that they type, the things that they're working on, in large part is actually driven by what we understand as being important to you all. You help us set the priorities. Sherry is our community manager, and most notably actually runs, well, maybe not most notably, but notably runs our forums. So please make sure to pay attention to that subforum over on community.magento.com. Now, another important issue, and I think I'm going to guess it's a majority, but how many of you are Magento developers? A goodly number. All right. So if you didn't raise your hand, either there's no need to be that shy, or you're not a developer. So you hopefully at least understand the importance, the significance of developers in the Magento world. Literally, we can make a great software product, and it won't make a damn bit of difference if there aren't the developers there to adapt that, to customize that, and to your specifications if you're a merchant, right? we can't do it on our own. So it's really important that we make it as easy as possible for developers to get their job done. Just as I would say store administrators don't really want to feel the software, they don't want to feel friction in the application, they don't have to think about how the thing's working, they just want it to work. Developers operate in the same way. All right, you should come to rely on how the system is put together and how you can get things done. So that falls under this umbrella of developer experience. And what we've done is we've actually put Piotr, who I just mentioned, is actually in charge of this developer experience thing. Now we've always considered developers as part of our users, right? But now we have this specific facet attached to pretty much everything we do for what is this like for the developer? You know, as a developer, am I going to enjoy how this thing was built? And so some of the things that we're working on to improve developer experience, as I mentioned, working through the GitHub backlog, right? Those are issues that developers took time to report. That's important for us to take a look at and to resolve. We are working on the front-end tech, and it's early to say exactly what we're going to do there. We have been working on, so one of the great things actually here in the Polish Magento community is actually from Snowdog. There's this initiative to update the front end tech, kind of simplify that layer, switch from less CSS to Sass. And we found that was very important to the developers. So that project is still in progress, but I'd say it looks promising, and keep your eye on that space because again we know that this is a big friction point for developers. We're also working on on the developer workflow in general. So like as a developer, inevitably you're going to encounter error messages when you're doing things. Maybe you've got a typo, maybe you forgot an XML file, or something. The system should give you quick and obvious feedback about that, not just an error occurred. So right now that's been also one of the challenges is we just, as developers have started to use this new software, they're finding these edges where the feedback from the system it's less than ideal. So we're working on those as well. Another thing that I found as I've gone around for the past couple of years just blathering on about Magento is that senior developers at companies, the people who should be really building awesome custom stuff, they are spending an inordinate amount of time just getting extensions to work, right? Has that been a pain for anyone here? Yeah, a few hands go up. Yeah, right. So there's two things there. Part of the problem is extension quality was questionable at times, and the real resolution to that was actually building the app store that Magento always should have had, right? So that means that we host the code ourselves. We're able to do a competent analysis when that code is submitted in the first place. You know, automate it so that we can handle an influx of lots and lots of extensions, and then kind of curate each of the extension categories. So that's something you should be aware of as a developer, is it's no longer oh, I need a social login extension. Let me see, oh my God, there's 150 of them. Which one do I choose? It's actually, now there's going to be a very limited band for each category. So if you are an extension developer or you're interested in extension development, please make sure that you build your Magento 2 extension sooner rather than later, because the spoils will go to the early adopters, or at this point, adopters. And the idea, of course, is sort of a better, more curated selection, as well as ensuring that there's quality. And the good thing is we also have a much bigger team around extensions right now, so we're able to address any issues with the extension vendors. If anyone's doing anything that, either nefarious or incompetent in their extension, we can address that with them or get them out of the ecosystem altogether. Another thing that I'd like to mention is that we have actually been working with the Docker team to get a sort of a Magento approved development image for Docker in place. That is soon. Someone asked me on Twitter, soon or Magento soon? It's soon, right? So yeah. Thanks, Niels. This was my chauffeur to meet Magento Serbia earlier this year, and he's given me a hard time. And then Magento U, I just thought I would leave it clearly this is the danger of changing your slides the morning of. Magento U, lots of potential. We are looking at our education program, and again, I'm sorry, it's a little too early to say exactly what changes are coming, but just count on more educational resources and I'll say more accessible. Just pay attention to us, to my Twitter stream. We'll be posting on that probably within the next month or so. And finally, in this category, developer documentation. Sorry, sound man. We have, oh, that's very nice. We have these Sultan tones. It's a cardinal sin of adjusting your microphone mid-presentation. Devdocs.magento.com. So I would say right off the bat, it was good that we have technical writers, right? That helps get technical writing done. But it's not enough, right? That's what we're hearing from you all, is that we have a lot of new things in our application that, quite frankly, you all are not as comfortable using yet, and you need some guidance from us. And so we have been spending time actually sending our technical writers to literally work with the education team, with the engineering team. For example, Tana, who is our lead technical writer, we stuffed her into Kiev for about a week to sit down and actually work on a perfect example of our deeper documentation effort is our brand new UI components docs. And these are literally within the last 2 weeks they've come up. So if you've been trying to figure out UI components, you should check out this link down here and tell us what you think. We've already had some people tell us, give us feedback on the new docs, and we'll incorporate their feedback and continue to improve upon those. Now, one thing though that we did with our documentation that we didn't do before is have the ability for you all to edit it, like in a controlled fashion. We used to have a wiki, and that was a wild west of information. And you had to remember to put, I think if you had a semicolon, you had to remember to put 3 backslashes in front of it. I don't know. So like we kept having to sort of re-edit edits. But now we have, with our technical writing team, they put everything into GitHub, and you can actually add to, or you can even file issues, whatever. If you don't know how to explain something, but you know it needs a better explanation, you can offer that. Okay. So, what else? What's next? We expect, of course, increased adoption of Magento 2. A lot of people have been waiting for 2 to shake out from 2.0 to 2.1 to 2.2. So we expect to see adoption increase, and increase sharply, especially at the beginning of next year. We also expect, along with that, that people will do what they've always done with Magento. So with Magento 1, we were finally blessed. I mean, those of us who were doing the work since 2007, 2008, I got my start in 2008. Those of you who had your hands up as having started in 2008, you remember how much fun it was to try and find information on Magento. You would Google, okay, Magento, create a new entity. And Google would say, did you mean Magneto? Create a new entity? Eventually, Google found out that Magento was a thing, but there was nothing. There was nothing, and we were lucky to have folks like Alan Storm to around to help explain things to us. He's been added on Magento 2 as well, but we expect, just like with Magento 1, that the community will write documentation on their own blogs. They'll post their findings, their process, and also we expect, because of this always a ton of boilerplate in a big framework like ours, we expect people will continue to contribute things that help developers get their stuff done. There's already several module generators for Magento 2, and I imagine that developers, as they write shell scripts and other tools, they'll release those as well in the true open source spirit that we have. So as I mentioned with Magento U, again, that's the future, is more content from us, and probably some change business offerings. Also, certification will come around eventually. As far as I know, that process we haven't even started building it out yet. But there will be Magento 2 certifications down the road. Another thing that I'd like to point out, and this is basically, I guess, my last big point, is that I think dev and deployment, my feeling is that we'll go more and more cloud. All right, it'll be cloudy, right? We have announced our enterprise cloud product. And I'm actually glad to say that Redbox Digital, Redbox, there we go, hi, launched. We actually have our first Magento Enterprise Cloud client live. Literally happened this morning. And that's Oliver Sweeney. There may be DNS propagation depending on where you're accessing the site from, but so that's the first client that's actually live. There's also, so that's for larger clients. There's also, we are working on the idea of a smaller version of that for smaller clients, smaller revenue clients. Way too early to give you specifics on it. We announced it at Imagine, but again, we're doing a pretty thorough investigation of that offering. And I would expect that that will impact you all, you developers and even the merchants out there, in the next couple of years. And I did want to have a quick personal note. Something struck me as I've been procrastinating occasionally. It's like my favorite pastime. Procrastinate. You hop on Facebook. You hop on maybe a news site, and then in this day and age, with so many things happening, elections, you get to the comments. You get down into that social cesspool of people, who seem to feel entitled to be right just because their stuff is in print. And two diametrically opposed views, both shouting at each other, trying to be right. And it struck me as I was doing this, hi Siri. It struck me as I was doing this, as I was, don't read the comments. Just nothing productive happens there. But I realized that we have something amazing with Magento. As I don't see this very much. And Magento's part of the PHP framework interoperability group, and there's so much just burning discussion and fighting and stuff happening there. And I love that as a community, we don't really see much of that. So I would say, everyone, please continue to contribute in the sort of socially responsible and, dare I say, friendly way with each other. It's important, I think, because, really, if we think about the future of Magento, the company is there, but your participation, your interaction with each other, and how we as a company can support that, how Meet Magento as an organization can enable that. Like, that's That's how we move forward. That's how we progress. That's how we continue to be, the biggest thing in online commerce, and a great place to get together and have a party tonight. So that's my content. I will bring up in just a moment Sherry Rohde, our community manager, to talk about being involved with the community. So questions tomorrow, or if you see me out in the hall, questions then. Thank you very much.